quality of life. The Deseret News had a story last fall headlined, "Why Utah Has a Once-in-a-Generation Opportunity Unique to Any Other Place in the World." And we've had real estate experts that have been in town and looked at this site at the Draper Correctional Facility and said that they can't think of an opportunity like this anywhere else, where you've got nearly 700 acres of land that will be available, kind of a blank canvas in the middle of a fast-growing metropolitan region, really in the middle of a burgeoning tech sector. And that just doesn't happen very often. So we recognize the magnitude of the opportunity, and that also adds to the magnitude of responsibility that we have to do this right. This is the Draper Correctional Facility, and you're familiar with it. We've all driven by it several times. We've got the facility itself, but outside of that fence, you can see in the background, there are hundreds of acres of undeveloped land used right now for raising cattle, and in many cases used for nothing at all. It's good land. We've done environmental, soil, historical, wetlands, and archaeological survey of the site, and it's pretty clean and will be ready for development. The site itself was constructed between about 1938 and 1950, been in operation since 1951, and will be moved to the new site in mid-2022, so a couple of years from now. We want to be ready to start construction soon after that. The legislature established the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, this entity, to oversee the redevelopment of the site. And with it, they established some objectives for us to accomplish. So we should maximize job creation, have a highly trained workforce, use this site to continue to train our workforce. Mention the high quality of life, not just here on the site, but for the region and areas surrounding it. And we can talk about what that means. It talked about strategic residential and commercial growth, essentially balancing housing and jobs on the site so there's not as much need to drive. Emphasis on natural lands, recreational opportunities. We foresee a chance here to have trails connecting some of our regional trails, like Bonneville Shoreline Trail to the Jordan River Parkway Trail. Opportunities for people to get outside and enjoy the outdoors. We're charged with improving air quality, minimizing resource use. So thinking about ways that we can develop that minimize adding pollution to the area, that use less energy and water, and we'll be looking carefully at that. Planning for transportation infrastructure, and in fact, the statute talks about world-class transit. So we're working very closely with our transit and transportation agencies in the state, along with many others, to advance transit through this site and down into Utah County. It says complement development on surrounding properties. So we want to be good neighbors, in short. We know that what happens at this site will have an impact on surrounding communities, and we want to make sure that we're developing in a way that is thoughtful and considerate. And then interestingly, suggested that we attract a nationally recognized research center, that we explore innovation, and that's something that we'll be looking at. The legislation creating creates a board, and our board has two co-chairs, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox and Representative Larry Snow. And so I hear somebody talking in the background. Are you asking a question, or maybe not? Okay. And then you've met two of our board members who are the co-chairs of this stakeholder working group, Mayor Ramsey and Senator Fillmore. The other board members include Senator Jerry Stevenson, April Cooper, who's the president and CEO of Alpine Companies, a real estate firm, Representative Steve Handy, Mayor Troy Walker from Draper, Val Hale, who's the director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Jim Russell, who's the director of the Division of Facilities and Construction Management, oversees construction projects for the state, and Commissioner Dave Wolstenhume, who is the Commissioner of Higher Education, emphasizing that higher education is important at this site. So these board members are charged with making decisions for the site and what will happen there. It's heavy responsibility. We've got a terrific group. Our board has settled on some guiding principles to help us make decisions as they're presented to us. First is to promote the public interest. So we want to emphasize that this is about building a place to advance the public good, not any individual interests. That this is a site owned by the state, means all residents of the state share in that ownership, and we have a responsibility to advance their interests. Set the standard. I think that just means that we want to set the bar high. We want to do something here that will advance development standards in the state, be a model for future development, and attract international attention. An iconic site. Next is think regionally. You know, we've got this 700-acre site, which, as we said, is a wonderful opportunity. But if we focus just on that site, we're going to miss opportunities and potentially create some challenges. So we need to think regionally, coordinate with the surrounding communities, counties, transportation agencies, and make sure that we're creating a regional benefit here. Next is take the long view. Rather than focusing solely on how we do this quickly and get the quickest buck possible, we want to have a development that's going to provide benefits for the long term, for generations to come, that will maximize the return to citizens through economic development and not just what's produced on this site. Next is be open and transparent. It's critical to us that because this is a state project, the residents of this state know what's happening and they have an opportunity to be involved. And then finally, act with integrity. We are absolutely committed to following the law, to following good data, and acting with uncompromising integrity. Building public trust in what we do is the coin of the realm, and we're only going to be successful if they know that we're doing this with the broader interest in mind and not with any hidden backroom deals. I think it's important to emphasize that we're not starting from scratch. Starting in 2016, the Point of the Mountain Development Commission, which is charged with looking at opportunities for developing the Point of the Mountain region wisely. So think Sandy to Saratoga Springs. They have worked very closely with us. There's overlap in membership on the board. And they conducted a public process involving well over 4,000 people that provided input on ideas for how we develop the region, what it ought to look like, created a vision for the region, and an implementation plan. So this has already been subject to extensive public involvement. The public was presented with different scenarios for how the prison site and the broader region could develop. There was broad consensus around scenarios D and E, and again, through literally dozens and dozens of workshops and meetings, we heard some clear direction from the public that resulted in a vision for the Point of the Mountain area. Right in the middle of that slide, you can see the transportation plan, and you can see the challenge with a potential bottleneck there. We need to get the transportation right for this region to work. You can see around the outside a number of principles that came out of that public process. Highly trained workforce and jobs. On the environment, improving air quality, reducing resource use, connecting trails, parks, open space. Community design is vibrant urban centers, jobs close to residences, variety of housing and community options. Transportation, we talked a lot about new north-south transportation avenues, connecting the street network so there are various ways for people to get around and not flooding the arterials. World-class transit, looking at north, south, east, and west throughput. And then at the site of the correctional facility, having a catalytic center at our site with a research and university presence. Now that may sound really familiar as you look at those. Those are the principles that were adopted into the statute that directs the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority. So the public process led to the legislation that directs our work. So the question now, I guess, is where you come in, and we want to talk a little bit about this. I mentioned earlier that this is a great opportunity. We as a staff and the board don't have all the answers. We're looking for input from the community, and in a very real sense, you serve as representatives of the community, helping us understand concerns, helping us gather ideas and craft solutions. So we've got 5 working groups. This group is the stakeholder group that is primarily elected officials, representatives of the community that will help convey to us what your constituents are thinking and how we can best communicate with them and respond to their interests. Got an education, research, and innovation group that'll be looking at building kind of an innovation district on the site with potentially a university presence. We'll be meeting with them for the first time this afternoon. Environment and air quality, helping us advance that legislative directive on air quality. Infrastructure and land use, these are primarily planners and transportation in the communities. They'll help us think through what the site looks like and how we can structure it most effectively and efficiently. And then the economic development, recruitment, and investment group will help us think about how we can maximize the economic return for the state here, how we can recruit the best companies, how we can find investment so that we don't have to rely on public monies to make this happen. So each will be meeting for about up to 2 hours, once a month. We plan on meeting monthly, but it'll be as needed. Some of these groups may not need to meet as often, or will wrap up some of their work earlier. But just in thinking ahead, that's kind of where we'll be. As we said, the meetings will be open to the public, and we'll record them and include them on our website. But we look at you as kind of subject matter experts, helping us to foster collaboration, identify resources, think innovatively, and come up with concrete recommendations for the board and for our work. We'd encourage you to take a future focus, think about how we can create the community we want for coming generations. But as we do this, I think our work has to be firmly planted in market reality. There's a risk of thinking big thoughts and innovatively and creating what some call the Emerald City syndrome, where you get a beautiful plan that just doesn't work in the market and can't be built. So we've got to balance vision with reality here. Another thing I'd suggest is we're really wanting to focus on statewide benefits. So this shouldn't be viewed as just a local project, but because it's a state project, we look for ways that we can benefit people statewide. I will say that on this previous slide, there was some research done on this vision and found that there could be some real statewide benefits if we develop consistently with this vision. One of the things that they identified was that revenues to local and state governments would increase from 12 billion to 19.7 billion statewide by 2050. Huge return. Another thing they found was that developing in this way would add $10,000 to the average annual household income of every household on the Wasatch Front. Think about that. By 2050, you could put $10,000 in every home on the Wasatch Front. Also found that we could improve the transportation system relative to the baseline. So we're looking for those kinds of benefits. I will say that the board is charged with making decisions, but they are very much open to input and have said that they're looking to be actively involved with you. We have deliberately put board members as co-chairs so they can communicate what they hear from you to the board. And we expect that we'll weigh very heavily your input as we move ahead. This is just a timeline, how we got to this point. The new facility is under construction out by the airport. We had the release of the Point of the Mountain vision in 2018. The board of this organization was formed in 2018. They hired me just about a year ago. And so we've been operating and putting together the foundation of the group. We got our first appropriation, thanks to you legislators, in this last legislative session. That's allowed us to put together a consulting team with legal counsel, with a communications group, some engineers that have done the survey of the site, RCLCO, which is a real estate advisory firm helping us understand the market, highest and best use, think through what the economic development potential of this site is and maximize that. And we just last night, as a board, identified a new planning consultant that'll help us put together a planning team of, we think, some of the best in the world to help develop a master plan over the next year. So the timing is, we'll work with our working groups, develop kind of the vision that we'd like to see, include that in an RFP process, an RFQ process, have a competitive process to hire this planning team. About the first of the calendar year, they'll get started on master planning. We think that these groups will help us identify the foundation for that master plan. And then through spring of next year, help review drafts of the plan and make sure that it's consistent with our direction and vision. And then we'll get busy as the prison moves in making it happen. So that is my background presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions, but I think I'll turn it to the chairs to add anything they'd like to see, and then we can continue with discussion about some of the questions that we put together.
Alan, thank you. Appreciate it. And I've been looking, it looks like we have, well, maybe Ezra. It says Ezra, Utah County. So Ezra, I apologize for not knowing your last name, but welcome. And do we have anybody else who's joined us since we?
Yeah, Senator Dan McKay has joined you.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for being here.
Hola.
Great. Okay. Senator Fillmore, did you have anything that you'd like to go over in addition to what Alan has said?
No, I reiterate everything that he said.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alan, I think you did a great job covering it, and I appreciate it. It's excellent background information. And so now let's turn it to questions. I mean, we would like to have, a discussion, but what we'd really like to know is what kind of questions you have about what's happening. Do you have questions on anything that Alan has shared? And then also, we'd like to just discuss your role in the process and how we can really make your participation the most meaningful. Does anybody have any questions on anything Alan has shared up to this point?
This is Senator
I'd like to ask
McKay.
a question.
Okay, Senator McKay and then Representative Stanquist. Go ahead.
Yeah, a few questions. So on the planning group, who has the board elected to hire?
I'm sorry, I missed that. On the planning side?
Yeah, you mentioned that you hired a world-class planner. I just wanted to know who you guys decided to hire.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I haven't had a chance yet to even contact the individual and those others who applied, so I think it can't quite make it public at this time. But I'll say it's an individual that has had extensive planning around the world, worked on a number of projects for 45 years, has had high-level positions in development companies, has served this role for other projects that have 13,000 acre projects where he's overseen the hiring of a planning team, managed that team, and been kind of a planning manager for the board. So we feel very good about this individual, and we'll be making it public very soon. I forget what your title is. I apologize. I want to be appropriate, but I can't remember what your title is. I'm the executive director. Okay. So Director Matheson, if you would do me a favor, would you just notify me when that becomes public? I obviously, having worked in land and real estate, and we've talked about that before, but the planner does matter. RCL is a very well-known name from a market study standpoint, and so grateful that you're working with a very well-known market group. Do you, as you look at this, what do you think the timeline looks like? And if you covered this at the beginning of the call, I can get that later. I apologize. I'm driving through Spanish Fort King, and it is not great signal. So, when would we see first development on the site? Yeah, I think that's a great question, and a lot of it's going to be driven by the market, of course. But we appreciate your interest and participation, and I've really appreciated your meeting with me and sharing your development expertise, not just in your political role. We would hope to have a master plan in place a year from now. Then we'll start refining that. The prison move is going to be mid-2022. Then we'll start the demolition and site prep over the following months. We would hope then to be ready to start building, I would say, in 2023, probably the first part of the year. There is a chance, because there's a lot of land on that site outside of the correction facility fence, that potentially, if the right opportunity came along before that, we could start development even before the prison move. But I think that would have to be an extraordinary opportunity, consistent with our planning and vision. But we don't want to miss great opportunities either. So that's generally the thinking at this point. I'm grateful for that timeline. I would encourage you, obviously, to
obviously, I appreciate nobody wants to miss a great opportunity, and I think that's very appropriate. And I also appreciate that nobody is looking at hurrying with this site, and I think you know this, and I know the rest of the board is aware of that. It's just rare that we have an asset like this available, and I'll just reemphasize for everyone that from a state's perspective, we're very hopeful that there won't be a feeling of exigency as we try and develop or look for development opportunities for the site, but that we can afford to be patient. And so, but I appreciate the director and the board for all their great work. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, Representative Stenquist.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this question, but I just wanted to clarify that the Land Use Authority is this Point of the Mountain Commission. It's not necessarily with Draper City, and yet there will be some coordination with planning as the development goes on with Draper City. Is that, do I understand that correctly in terms of all zoning decisions are made by this board, and only maybe some of the planning and engineering would be coordinated with Draper City? How is that relationship going to work?
Yeah, that's correct, Representative. The Point of the Mountain State Land Authority has land use authority on this site. The site's within Draper, and we just consider them very close and appreciated partners. Mayor Walker is on our board. We're working right now with Draper City to develop an interlocal agreement that will outline the various roles of the organizations. And, we don't have an engineering group. Draper does. They've got expertise that we don't have. They'll be likely providing municipal services to this area. So we need to make sure that those services are clear and that a way to pay for them is clear. So that's a process that's underway, and we want to make sure that there's open line of communication.
If I may
Okay,
add to
great,
that,
thank you.
in
It'll be
addition to Mayor Walker serving on this board and of course being very actively engaged on this, the city manager Dobbins has also been, Dave Dobbins has been coming to, he's been coming to our meetings from the very beginning as well, so that there's a good collaboration with Draper City, because it is a unique situation with state-owned land completely in Draper needing to be serviced by Draper. It is unique, but that partnership, I think to this point, has gone quite well, and in collaborating, how's the best way to handle this so that it's not an unnecessary burden on Draper City, that we can take care of the needs across the board. But that's a really good question. Anybody else have any questions about this process, or what your role might look like? Okay.
That's a great question there, Mayor. You mentioned what our role might look like. This is Senator McKay again. I assume our role is to be cheerleader. Is there something different?
It's a good place to start. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, certainly that's part of it, but I think we trust your judgment. As we said, this is a state project, so we need input. So if you could, we'd love to have support for the site, but we also want to make sure that if there are concerns that are out there, you hear discontent, that we're aware of that, if it appears that we're being tone deaf to the input we're getting, we need you to keep us on track so that we're doing things that will be worthy of public support. So you've got contacts and expertise that we don't, and we just want to make sure that if you're hearing things or have ideas, that those are shared with the board.
In that light, obviously you have several surrounding cities. some of those cities are represented on the board. I hear South Jordan's mayor, and I know Mayor Walker's on that board as well. There are others, and I think Lehigh's mayor, is on that board. What are being done with the cities that have a presence or touch or influence that area, to bring those cities up to speed, specifically their councils and those kinds of things?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, Mayor Johnson and Mayor Timothy from Lehigh and Bluffdale are part of this working group. I don't think they've joined us yet today, but we've invited them to participate. I've also met with the city councils of the surrounding communities and with some of the community groups. We're going to continue that process. So on a regular basis, we'll be sitting down with those working group or with the city councils in working meetings and public meetings. The other piece is we've got planners from surrounding communities and economic development directors and other staff members that are serving on some of these other working groups, helping us with the infrastructure and land use and the economic development piece. So we will be doing more public participation, some workshops and mechanisms for members of the public to weigh in as we start developing ideas and building on, as we said, the work that involved more than 4,000 people in the initial visioning process.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I really appreciate that. I was going to say, I'm glad that you mentioned beyond the elected officials, because, if you look at the experience, for example, of South Jordan and their ability to plan large community projects in working with a community partner like Daybreak, if you look at Draper and their, influence and development of the Sunquest project, and, you just start looking around those surrounding communities, they have a planning staff and an engineering staff that, very qualified experts. And I think including them in your design charrettes for the master plan and other things, I think can also help as well. And I think, and this, but we have, when I say we, as I've been involved in this, consideration of this Point of the Mountain Commission for the last 8 years or 9 years that I've been involved in it. We're hopeful that all the cities recommend or recognize that as state partners, we really are trying to find ways that we can really rise, have the tide rise and have all boats rise with us, instead of necessarily being competitive and, trying to, just be competitive between the cities. And that is one of the risks. So I really appreciate you, reaching out to those community leaders as well as their staff to continue using that expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's a good point. We don't want to be in competition with them. There may be some just naturally, but I think we want to work to, as we said, take a regional focus, not just look at the interest of this site.
Since you mentioned competition, Director, do you mind, are we going to be using CDAs, or I don't know what we're calling them these days, but, they're CDAs to me, but they're economic development, just, reimbursement agreements and that kind of stuff as we try and attract users to the site?
I don't think those decisions have been made yet. We have a range of tools that are available, and that's one of the things that RCLCO is going to look at as we start moving down the road a little bit further. Looking at ways that we can pay for necessary infrastructure at the site, and looking for ways that we can pay to get transit through the site and down into Utah County. What we haven't talked about much is whether we need to do something in the realm of incentives to attract companies to this area. I think that we're disinclined to do that if we can avoid it. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, hoping the opportunity at the site is enough to attract some good companies without having to throw a lot of incentives in.
I appreciate that. I'll add to that. one issue, and I know that you're aware of that, and all of these cities are probably going to roll their eyes. I'm not on video, so they can roll them loudly enough. But I'm hopeful that the city, this is going to be an interesting site for a lot of reasons. But that rising tide floats all boats is a great component, as long as we're not incentivizing retail. And so we need to be careful, as we try and balance the retail sales tax dollars that are generated on the site, that we're working with, Lehigh, working with Draper, working with Bluffdale, working with Riverton, South Jordan, and those kinds of things. I really would hate to see us get involved in incentivizing retail projects necessarily with CDAs. That's a conversation obviously for further down the road. But it is personally an axe to grind I have with some of these projects that, large retail tenants who are going to locate into an area, and they're going to locate there whether they're incentivized or not. And yet, they are always going to the cities and always going to the state looking for hopeful that we will carefully balance those policy decisions. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying let's make sure that we're carefully balancing and working with our neighboring cities again instead of being competitive. So,
yeah, so that's a great point, and absolutely agree.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else have any questions about this? No. Mayor Wilson, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to jump in. It actually moves us to the vision for the site, but it builds a little bit on the senator's comments. And anytime I'm on the same page as Senator McKay, I need to jump in. It's interesting. I was thinking of that same kind of analogy, the rising tide floats all boats. And this is very much one of those opportunities. I want to just remind everyone what I think we already know, but this COVID period right now is really transformative with land use, jobs, economic development. I think it was Google that announced that they're not going to have people go back into their quote unquote office, wherever that may be, until summer of next year, this time next year. I think that when people do go back, and of course there are industries where you don't work from home, I get that. But when you look at this many acres, the promise and opportunity, we are going to have to be forward thinking about growth, about our workforce, about the post-COVID world, about the next generation, and really be smart. And one of the things that came out of our assessment of our economic kind of challenges throughout the county is how few jobs are located on our city or on our county's west side compared to east side. And though this is generally, it's kind of center east, the communities to the west are going to be impacted by this development. And it will be amazing to create job opportunities on this site that serve not just Utah County or the north end of the valley or the east side, but also communities on the west side so that their commutes can be mitigated and have options and places to work that are not, in other sections, like other counties or in downtown Salt Lake or, the section of the valley in the northwest quadrant of the county that has a lot of manufacturing jobs. So I just think being really smart about our land use choices, really forward thinking. And I know that having talked to economic development directors in other counties and other cities throughout the nation and planners, everybody like this, it is transformative right now. Everything's been turned upside down. And I know with Alan's past and interest in air quality, as well as his planning background, we've got the right team to do this well. Also the legislators and, future governor committed to doing this right. But I just see, other than places like Arizona, like the Phoenix area that are spread out, you don't get acreage like this that often. And it is such a prize for us to have. And I just see a really, really amazing opportunity. I think it's just going to look different than the things that we built in previous decades. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not saying anything that everyone doesn't already know. I just want to emphasize it a little bit more.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. And what an interesting time as we're really trying to come up with the vision and decide what is the best use of this land that will maximize opportunity for all residents in the state of Utah to have this pandemic happen and really throw a game-changing wrench in how we look at things going forward. So thank you. That's a big part of these discussions that we'll continue having and why we need the input from all of you. This is going to take all of us. We have our small board and we've got excellent people on this board, and the statute is what dictates who, how many members of the board and where they come from and whatever, but that's why we need input from all of you. Thank you for that.
Then maybe I'll just jump in and say I've spent a lot of time the last few months on national calls with real estate experts and market experts talking about how things will change post-COVID. What will it mean to office space? What will it mean to residential? What will it mean to transportation? And I think that we're going to be part of a broader conversation about what that looks like. Yeah, certainly we think that this site will look different from the developments we've seen in the past.
And we're excited about it. We think this really is the opportunity to be innovative and to really look at the future down the road. I say this often. I say it in city council meeting often, but vision is rarely popular because vision is a long-term, big picture. This is the benefit across the board in the big picture, but it isn't. We don't always feel it immediately. So it's not always popular because it's not instant gratification. This is an opportunity for us to really strike a great vision for the future of the state and quality of life here. And anyway, we're looking really forward to it. So thank you. And with that, Alan, I'm just going to let you lead into this next question, unless Senator Fillmore, at any point, please don't hesitate to jump in. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't have anything I want to add, but I really am appreciating the discussion and the free-flowing conversation that we're having. It's exactly what the what the working group is supposed to be.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Alan, I'll let you take it away.
I guess this next question, what's your initial vision for the site? Now, we know that there are a lot of different views out there about what ought to happen at this site. I've heard a number of them, everything from an all-electric city of the future to Disneyland, Utah, to all agriculture.
And I'm a fan of Disneyland, Utah, by the way. Never, and it wasn't my proposal, but I could get on board with that.
So we just thought it'd be useful to kind of find out initially where people are and what they see happening at this site to help us focus our thinking a little bit. So we'd be interested in any of you who would jump in to share, as you look at the future of this site, what do you see at this point? Understanding it may change as we get more information. Any thoughts?
Doesn't McKay have something to say?
I think we lost the senator. Yeah, I think he's not with us anymore.
Hey, Alan, or Mayor Ramsey, I would like at this moment for you guys to maybe just take a couple minutes to describe what conversation let's frame it for us a little bit. Tell us what conversations have been had to date. There are senators and House members and local officials and others on this call that have been more engaged, specifically sort of on the ground there on this project to date. So maybe just give us a sense of what do we see our options being. I mean, I made the point about maybe taking those options and testing our own assumptions given the world that we're living in now and will in the future. But where are we now with some of the thinking and ideas? The Disneyland Utah one is kind of fascinating. I mean, at some level, it does have.
Anytime someone says that, and I do think somebody's, people have tossed that around, but not actually seriously, and nobody on the board is taking it serious. But every time that's mentioned, even tongue in cheek, I'm like, yep, love that.
Yeah, it's a crazy idea, but not even necessarily a bad one.
Mountain is so fun in January here. Right?
Yeah, I don't know what we would do in the winter. We could we had fun during the Olympic Games for 10 days in 2002. We could probably figure something out. But anyway, what's out there? If you could help frame it a little bit for us.
Yeah, and I'll be clear. We don't have a plan for the site yet, and so we're trying to keep it kind of open to ideas. But yes, there's been discussion. We know what came out of the Development Commission public process, and I think our board has talked about some ideas. They'd like it to be a place that is iconic, that has a bit of a wow factor. We've talked about a mixed use area where people can live, work, play, recreate. We've talked about a place where we may want to see some international companies with an anchor location there. In particular, we've talked a lot about having an innovation district. These are areas where maybe education, startup support, accelerators, incubators, venture capital, mature companies come together and create an ecosystem that's creative, where new ideas are born, where research is done to try out those ideas, and then we have the system in place to commercialize those ideas. So you could, we've had some great conversations with the high-tech community and the biotech community of the state. And they think that this is a place where we could attract an R&D arm or division of a major international biotech company, or a regional headquarters for a high-tech company. We also see it as a place where we want to have open space, a place where people can gather, where you can go to a restaurant that has a white tablecloth, where you might listen to a concert or street musicians, trails, places for people to enjoy the outdoors. So those are on the table. We've also thought of this future focus, where maybe a place where the car is not king, where you have electronic circulators take people around, minimizing the need for cars, especially in an area that's got a traffic challenge. Maybe even vertiports where those people moving drones can land, and we're probably not as far away from that as you think. UDOT right now is capturing the rights of way to the airspace, and they're already planning for that next round of transportation. So we're thinking that we want to be building not for today, but for 10, 20 or more years into the future. So those are general ideas. How they play out and whether the market will support them are questions that some of our advisors are asking now.
I feel like just hearing you, Alan, that you're on the right track, again, to that point of really, like, we can't comprehend sitting here amid COVID in 2020, what 2030 looks like, or 2050. I am amazed to, on occasion turn on the self-driving component of my Tesla. I bought one because of the air quality issues. My kids convinced me. I was very reticent to get one. I bought the, somewhat affordable lower model, and I'm leasing it, and I love it. And I could not have imagined 9 months ago, before I got the car, that you really can safely do a double click and have a self-driving car. And I think about also my own, this great opportunity for 3 years to work at the Moran Eye Center. And I knew nothing about the eye. I have relatively good eyes and have in my family, but I learned a lot about eye disease and eye research, and really connected more with the day-to-day downstream impact of like the National Institute of Health funding, and how, that rolls into the University of Utah network, as well as not just medical. In the case of my own experience, it was the eye, but just all of the medical research, and then the engineering research, the steps between basic science, the efforts that a university goes through in receiving those federal grants, to actual market rollout and the barriers around that. And I know there have been various state-funded University of Utah initiatives, but I think using this land in a way where we really think about who goes to an office or a setting to work and why, whether it be manufacturing or research. Like I think about half the building at the Moran Eye Center, a very expensive building in an overcrowded campus at the University of Utah. How many of those researchers need to be in the lab on site every day? Those are people that need to come together to do their work. When we manufacture certain things, we have sometimes a lot of big machinery, sometimes not so much. If we can look at the future of manufacturing and that continuum, and identify and create a site that people really do need to come to in terms of the job element. My husband is a tech guy, and I'd love for him to leave the house on occasion to go to the office that he has near the, and this is pre-COVID, like right now he probably shouldn't leave, but I'm like, honey, I need the counter today. I'm going to work from home. He works from home, and he has a very successful technology company, and he has an office near the airport in the park out there that he never goes to. So who still needs to be together to work? And I think if we can center our work initiatives of this site around that, I love the idea of the continuum of research to manufacturing, research to productization, and that space, all the while making sure that we have appropriate housing on site, a diverse, like some density, some larger lots, that mixed continuum that's so necessary as we see such high growth here. And then also the quality of life initiatives. We get a lot of pushback on Olympia Hills, but there are more parks planned on that site than we've seen in this valley. There's more open space committed. There's more opportunity for connection to the foothills. Those quality of life, Alan knows this better than anyone, but the trail systems where we can create some water features, and we continue to attract people here because not just our mountains, but our great recreation focus all around. So that's sort of what I see. I'm curious about the opportunity with our university, our research labs, BYU included, as we look at solutions around this.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know, Muriel, did you have anything you wanted to add as far as what, and if you may not at this point, I don't know, it might have already been covered, but we had every member of the board answer a laundry list of questions and really try to give their idea for what, based on statute, what they kind of thought their vision for the site would be. And Muriel's team collected all that information. And I think Alan covered a lot of it. I just am wondering, Muriel, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Ramsey. I think Alan really hit on all of the kind of high-level feedback we heard from the board. A lot of those things articulated in the guiding principles with the forward-thinking approach to innovation and technology for the site, this generational opportunity. How do we kind of take these concepts and apply them there on the site, making sure that not only can people more seamlessly, get through the area, but also get to the site specifically as a destination. Quality of life, open space, trail connectivities, everything that Mayor Wilson just articulated so well. It's definitely, I think, top of mind, right, as the board's considering what to do for the site.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. And Mayor Wilson, thank you for your great thoughts. See, we have a lot to figure out, and it's going to take all of us to make sure that we get it right, because it's imperative that we get it right. It's not optional.
Ramsey, I'll just add, I really do feel we're on the right path here. I think that a ton of work has been done over the past few years to really plan strategically for this future. I think that really what you're looking at here is building the heart of this valley and connecting Utah County with Salt Lake County. There's a spine already. You're kind of building the hub here, and it's ready to go. A lot of work has been done. A lot of the stakeholders are on board, and we're ready to just kind of put in those final pieces and get going with this vision. It's exciting. I'm ready to see it kind of come to fruition here.
Awesome. Agree with you. Great thoughts. I love that. It's true. It's great. Does anybody else contribute or about vision for the site before we move on? Okay. Let's go on to goals. Okay, what are your thoughts? We would love your input. We want to make sure, this is absolutely critical, that the development of this site contributes to the quality of life for our region. And a concern that we have, that we realize, is that as this begins to go in, there can be a lot of members of the public who are concerned that it's going to take away from their quality of life. And it's an understandable fear that, change. I think a lot of people's hesitancy to change or to grow stems from that. They're concerned that it's going to take away from their quality of life. And it's top of mind for us to make sure that does not happen. We want this to contribute, not take away from quality of life for the region. So we would love to hear any initial ideas that you have to how we can help make that happen.
Mayor Ramsey, I think the biggest fear that I hear from residents surrounding the site is transportation issues. They're just very, very concerned that this is going to become a transportation traffic nightmare.
Right. I think you're right. And that's part of why, you may have heard Mayor Walker say he wants no cars at all. His vote is a total carless area that we can get around without any cars. But I think transportation
it's critical. It's absolutely the most critical piece. And the more we talk about the things that Director Matheson spoke of, the open space and the jobs and the economic opportunities, those are the things that are going to be the winning pieces of this. So we really need to focus on those and then find the ways to mitigate the that aren't quite so winning, like the traffic.
Right. Thank you.
But that infrastructure in place and getting tracks or front runner on board really early on, that's crucial in my opinion.
I think so too. I think it's crucial to the success of the area, also to the comfort level of everyone in all the surrounding communities if they recognize that there's transportation infrastructure going in place. I think that is a lot of people's concern too. They just want to make sure that that's in place before they see growth, or at least that it's happening, that it is going to happen, that it's figured out and going to happen. I think you're right.
They don't want it to be post. They don't like it when we let it get to the breaking point and then we try to address it. They want it to be addressed.
Right. Agreed. Alan, do you have any thoughts on this?
I just absolutely agree. I've talked to hundreds of people about this project, and almost universally they're excited about the potential, and almost universally they're afraid of the traffic. So we know that has to be job number one, and we're having A lot of really good conversations with transportation agencies and surrounding communities about how to address that issue.
No, this is Senator Fillmore. I mean, I know that we're here to hear from others, but I think that's right. It's what can this site do to improve the quality of life overall? It is be a catalyst for improved transportation infrastructure. This site is not going to be all things to all people. It's big enough to be a lot of things to a lot of people. And as long as we get the critical things like transportation infrastructure and the right mix, which is something that Mayor Wilson touched on earlier, if we hit those big things done correctly, I think we're very likely to have a successful development, even if the mix of things is not what I would pick or you would pick. But if the community is able to have input in that mix and we get the big things right, then I think we're well positioned for success.
Thank you. Tasha, we can't hear you.
Mayor Wilson said something that I thought was really important. She said, we have a lot of people commuting from the west side. And if we could get them jobs right where they're at, then we'll be reducing traffic in some ways. So I think that was a really good thing too.
Right. Great. Agreed.
I think that really speaks to the regional nature of the significance of the site. That, yes, of course, we're looking at job generation specifically on the site, but if there's a potential, right, with job creation that helps to support folks on the west side, then they're not commuting in the first place, particularly if we can really kind of catalyze this technology and innovation district. There's a lot of opportunity for people to just work from home while living on the west side of Salt Lake County.
Thank you. As one who lives on the west side of Salt Lake County, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, well, how about we move on to our next. Public support. We would love your input. I mean, we've discussed this in a lot of roundabout ways, but we really do want to build public support from all the surrounding communities, from our elected officials and the general public. And we know that keeping them engaged and giving them input and opportunity to interact, that is going to be important. But also, we want the expertise, we want the ideas, we want the input, but the support, we don't want the public to come out with their pitchforks and torches with this about things that because we haven't explained it well. We want to make sure that we are leading the discussion and that we are out front with information to try to help prevent some of the potential negative impact of this from people who may not know anything about it. They just might hear, oh, great, there's going to be a big new development, and immediately go, oh no, our quality of life is going to be negatively impacted. We really want to lead out on the messaging and help people understand what this is, but we have to get it right to do that. We would love any input you have on what we can do, all of us together, to try to work together to build support amongst ourselves and also the people that we represent and all those who are going to live in this area and work in this area and be impacted by it. So if you have any thoughts on that, we'd love to hear it.
Hi, this is Ezra from Commissioner Range's office at Utah County.
Hi,
I think
Ezra.
it's first and foremost, kind of touching on the ideas we've already talked about, is that transportation factor is going to be the primary red flag to anybody who hears about this project and knows the location of it. I think it's going to be difficult to, just because of where it is located, to not attract people from all over the state or the region to come to this area if there are beneficial things here. And so making sure that we have a strong transportation plan and a very cohesive way to ensure that this won't be a complete negative impact to the traffic and just a huge traffic jam along that corridor. I think that will be one of the most primary things that we need to do to be able to mitigate that public outrage.
I think, I know as a board, we agree 100%. That's something that we've talked a lot about. Thank you for that. Appreciate that, Ezra. You're absolutely right. And I didn't know that you were with Commissioner Ainge's office. For that, I apologize. I just know it says Ezra, Utah County. So thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Anyone else have anything you want to add about building public support? And this will be an ongoing, obviously, an ongoing conversation and effort. Tasha, do you have something?
I think in Draper, we really talk a lot about open space. So the more you can do with building access to open space there and preserving some of the wetlands, I think that's really important. There's a lot of acreage there already that is already preserved. So maybe adding to that, or I don't know if there's any opportunity to build some sort of a reservoir area, or I don't know, more biking trails. Those things are really huge wins in the area. Connecting into existing pathways is really helpful. Any sort of arenas or sporting venues, things that residents see really as wins for them and their families, things they can buy into.
Great points. I can see Alan and Muriel notes. So, good. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything else? Alan, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's really good input, and there are certain keys. One is that we listen, and that people feel like we're working with them in partnership to build the kind of community they want. I think about the people who have invested in their homes, their communities. Of course, they're going to be concerned about things that would change what attracted them to the area. So if they feel like they've got no input into the process and something's being done to them, then there's going to be resistance. So we need to make sure that, building on what's already been a very extensive public involvement process, we continue to get input and listen. Now, the challenge is going to be, we're going to have to make decisions at some point. And we're not going to be able to address every concern. We're not going to give everybody exactly what they want. But I think if we have a process where we explain why decisions are made and the constraints that we're working under, most people will be reasonable and understand that. But we are going to be launching a website in the next few weeks. We'll have social media out there. We'll be reaching out to the traditional media. So we're about at a point where we can start launching much more public involvement and education.
Thank you. How about we move on to what's next? So what the next steps for this group, what are the next steps? And what we would like to know as well, I mean, we can why don't I have Alan maybe talk us through next steps and get some feedback on what information you need from us and how's the best way for us to communicate with you, and so that we can work together and not overwhelm, but get your input and make this a working partnership that's not burdensome, that really helps lead to success. So, Alan,
we absolutely value your input, but know that you're all incredibly busy. I think that for our standpoint, in terms of timing, between now and kind of September, October, we're hoping to identify the building blocks for our process to select a planning team. So we're going to send out a real detailed RFQ, RFP that will specify what we're looking for and the types of development that we're looking for. So the discussion today has been really great. I think what we plan to do is take this information. We'll collect the key points and record them, share them with the board at our meeting in a couple of weeks. And we're just kind of looking, I think, at this point, see if you've got thoughts on information that would be useful to you. Ways that we can communicate in these meetings. If you have something outside of the meeting and just want to give me a call and talk, I think our next slide is going to show some contact information where you can get in touch with us. But we want this very much to be a dialogue, not overly driven by our side, because we want to be listening. So I guess I'd just say, in terms of the next steps, we'll collect the information and the key points that you've raised. We'll share them with you and with our board. We'll start thinking about specific issues that we need to have addressed. And part of that is going to depend on what we hear from the other groups over the next 3 days. And so we'll be sending some additional discussion questions out for your consideration in advance of the next meeting.
Okay. If you want to put up the contact information, if you don't mind doing that. Look at that. It's coming together. Come a long way.
Yeah, we just, the board just voted to approve a logo last night. So we're going to start getting the look and feel and be out on social media, and we'll be a real organization. It's great.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Senator Fillmore, did you have anything that you would like to add as we wrap up?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Mayor, for facilitating this meeting so well. And Alan, you are clearly well prepared, and we appreciate the vision that you bring to it. I just want to thank everybody, including those that have dropped off, for participating and giving us your feedback. That's important in this first meeting, and we'll be able to refine that going forward. As we try to have these kinds of meetings monthly, we can hopefully get into a groove where we really start getting good feedback, and hopefully we can get kind of some broader participation. I think there'd be a greater benefit by having this group be a little bit bigger. So maybe if we could just ask those of you that are here to evangelize about joining the Stakeholders Working Group, we would appreciate having feedback from even more people.
Thank you. It's a really good point. A lot of members of this group who are not here. Yeah. Go ahead, Alan.
I was just going to say, we'll reach out to those who were invited and not able to be here and share the discussion and give them opportunities to provide further input as well.
Thank you. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap up? Okay, if not, we're not a voting body, so I don't need to take a motion to adjourn, right? We just close. This is a public meeting, but we're not a formal voting body, so I think we can just close, right?
I think that's right.
Okay, well then we'll just say thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for your input, and thank you in advance for your time and efforts and your expertise in working with us to get this right for the people that we all represent, the people that we all serve, and for the state that we love so much. So appreciate all of you, and stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good day. Thank you for taking your time to spend with us today.
Thank you, Mayor Dodd.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.